We start this exercise with the Pi System Explorer, which you'll find under the Start menu, under All Programs, Pi System. We're going to go into the Notifications section once we open up the right database. So this is our mechanism for exploring AF. Choose Database right here. Now, as I said, we do have a solution already called Solution_Notifications Learning Lab Database. Now, this exercise is based on the work you did in the previous exercise. So if you've created this status notification, you should probably start there. We're going to basically add new content to that. That's what I'm going to do in this case. If you didn't do that exercise, you can take a look at the completed solution. Just go into this solution_status. So we'll start with this. I'll open that existing database, and then I'll choose this status notification. Now it's really as simple as going into the Content tab and adding more content. So we've seen the overview before. We've seen the trigger. We've seen subscriptions, etc. We currently have a subscription to Rudy Wells, and it's in his email that we're going to add this. The emails going to him are going to include extra content now. So we'll choose Add. First thing I'm going to do is a file link. So for a file link, you can go out and browse for any UNC type reference, any file share that you've got local. The best way to do this is to specify, using UNC reference, the name of the computer. So this is going to be the file server. I'm going to go ahead and put in the name of my server, OSIsoft TRNG. Now, by just putting in the two backward slashes, the name of the server, it's going to bring up a list of all the shares available, and I'll just browse to the share that I want. And that's all there is to it. As you can see, I now have a brand new file reference. That is currently the best way, and the only way really, to make our file reference is through this UNC reference here. But remember, that's not the only way to make a file appear when you click on it in the email. You can choose Add and File, and then in that case you can just browse to a file and then make that a file attachment. As I said, I didn't want to do that in this case because I'd rather just send a reference to keep everything kind of centrally located. So that accomplishes the file link. Let's add a second bit of content. This content, we're going to be adding a web link. Now, I can make a link to an RT Reports web page or an RT Web Parts web page if I want. In this case, I'm simply going to be sending the user over to a SharePoint web page. So I'm going to choose Other. And this is where I get to specify the name and the link address. Now for the name, I'm simply going to call it something like, let's call it Learning Lab Solutions, because that's the name of the website. And for the URL, well, obviously it would be easier for you if you went out and browsed for it, but you can just type it in here as well. So if I go out and browse and then copy the URL and then paste it here, it would probably be easier. In fact, I think I'll do that in this example. Yeah, this is the default website you'll see in the Learning Lab environment. I want to go to the Solutions directory. So if I remember correctly, it's one of my favorites. There we go. So there it is. This is where I want people to land. So I'll just select that, do a copy, go in here and do a paste. But of course I could have typed that in there as well. Now some web pages allow you to pass parameters or arguments to it. So a web page that might take you to the current weather at a specific site, and you have to pass an airport name or something like that. Or for example, in the case of RT Web Parts, you can pass arguments that will change the start and end time of the RT Web Parts display. That's available by choosing this parameter here, in which you can specify the name of a parameter and the value of the parameter, and that will append that to the link address. So before I get off of this, I'll go ahead and choose Test just to see if this works. Let me close out of this first, just to make sure there's nothing up my sleeve here. Go ahead and choose Test. And as we can see, it looks like it's making the link properly, or it's making the jump properly, I should say. I'll go ahead and say OK. And so now we have a second type of additional content. It's this link right here. Now the third additional content I said I was going to add was going to be this instant RT web parts trend. But you notice it's there already. Well, why did I not have to add that somewhere? Well, the reason I didn't have to add it is because if you go into, well, it's going to appear there automatically if the or as a piece of content that's available to you. It will be there automatically if Notifications knows about a SharePoint server that's using RT web parts in your network. So in my case, it's actually been set up that way. So if I go into Tools, Notifications, and go into Global Configuration, you will see that we have identified an RT web parts server. Now that's something that actually can be configured, or is normally configured when you install Notifications. You are prompted, what is the name of your RT web parts server, if any. And in the case of our installation, I went ahead and answered with that, and so that's why this appears as an option. Now, whether you give that to the people who are receiving the emails, whether you assign that to this person subscribed, that's up to you, and I'll show you how to do that in the next step. So in any case, that concludes this part of the exercise. We've got a web link, we've got a file link, and our next step is to go into the Subscriptions tab and control who gets to see this extra content. Now, since I did the previous exercise, you'll notice Rudy Wells is already listed as a subscriber. No problem. If you didn't do that previous exercise, the way you add Rudy, again, is just by going into Contacts. You search for that contact. I'll search for all contacts. This is going into the Active Directory as well, as well as going into all my existing contacts who may not be Active Directory users, and it's bringing them up here. Anyway, so I find Rudy and I add him as a subscriber to this. If I want to change the options, like is he notified on close or not, I can do that from here. Now the part that's brand new for this particular exercise is, you notice under this selected content pane here, it's some things that we've been ignoring up to this part of our discussion of notifications. Of course, we're going to include the standard content, but as you can see, there's other things that we can include as well, the things that we just configured. So for example, that this web link, if I want to include that web link, I would just check on that, and now that web link is going to be available. And by available, I mean it's going to be sent to them. Do you remember when we looked at the content, this instant RT web parts trend was there because we had configured a SharePoint, an RT web parts server? Well, that doesn't mean you're automatically going to get that. You have to actually select this for each subscriber. So now that subscriber is going to get that. This is scrolled off the top of my screen, or the bottom of my screen. Let me make this a little bit bigger so we can see the rest of it. Yeah, there we go. This last one, file, that's that content attachment that we did as a PDI file that's sitting off in a network share somewhere where we made reference to in our content. So that's how we assign content. And as you'll notice, if you add different people as subscribers, different people can receive different content. So that's completely up to you. Let me go ahead and unsubscribe. Okay, so that concludes how we're going to add this. In this case, I'm not going to include this trigger input, although you can try that and just take a look at the results and see what you think of that. Okay, let me go ahead and check in the results, and then we'll test this out. So as we've done before, in order to test this, we need to make sure that one of these values is going to trigger. And I've got my choice. I think what I'll do, let me see, I'd like to see immediate response here. So I'm just going to add, for the sake of making this easier to trigger, I'm just going to add a brand new condition. And this is really part of the exercise, but it's just to make this a little bit easier to demonstrate. I'll add a brand new condition, which is a simple comparison. Let's just say when the temperature is greater than We'll go with greater than 400. Then we would like that to take a value, we'll just say it's a value of high. So I've added that to make this a little bit easier to test. Don't want to have to wait around for this to fire. Temperature, if you recall, under status notification, this temperature, or excuse me, under the element called device status, temperature is pointing to the tag CDT158. I can see that by going into the elements and looking at device status and looking at the attribute called temperature. See, that's my pi tag that we're currently pointing to. Okay. So we're just about ready to test this. As I said, I'll go ahead and check this in. And we are sending this is going to Rudy Wells. What we should see now is Rudy's been receiving emails all along from the previous example. Now the emails, when this fires, should receive additional content that we didn't see before. So in order to test this out, let me go ahead and increase the value over 400 so that this will fire. I'll go into System Management Tools, and I'll go into the Data section under the Archive Editor. I'm going to look for the tag CDT158. I could have also just typed it in there if I wanted to. And let's just go with the last 1 hour. Okay, so nothing is over, it's not over 400 now. Let's go ahead and put this at 410, and then I'll go ahead and save. Now that should very quickly end up in a notification firing. As you can see, it has fired, it's taken a high state. It has sent an email, and the email has gone to Rudy Wells. So let's test this out. Let's open up Outlook as Rudy Wells. As I mentioned before, you can do that by doing a right click, do a run as. That's a right click on Outlook icon there, and then we could just log in as R. Wells with the password student. Now I've also created these links here to do it automatically if you prefer. So this is going to log me into Outlook as Rudy Wells. Let's see if he's gotten any new notifications. Yeah, sure enough, he's gotten some new notifications. Let's see if we can see where they change. Let's see. Yeah, see, this notification here simply had an acknowledge, and so did this one. But now we're seeing we've got additional content. So now if I click on any of these options, we'll go ahead and get that extra content. So for example, this Learning Lab Solutions, this is going to take me to that web link. That was the web link option. We also had the content attachment. I'll go ahead and start this up. This is going to take a second to launch. This is launching Process Book right now. And then it's going to launch the display that goes, that is in that attachment. There we go. So, yeah, there we go. This is our Process Book display. And it's zoomed way out, but I can zoom in and see this in more detail. There we go. And this link here is going to take you off to one of those instant RT Web Parts trends that I demonstrated earlier.